It's appropriate and fitting that a military broadcaster performed these honors. He was born in Durant, Oklahoma, and is a graduate of Texas A&I University, from where he received a degree in chemistry and secondary education in 1961. He received a master's in television and film production in 1970 from the University of Texas. He was commissioned first in the Signal Corps at Fort Hood, Texas, then in Naples, Italy, then in Hue, South Vietnam, later in the infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then in an exchange program with the British Army, and finally at the Pentagon. He's been in charge of an engineering department, he's established a school's first television facility, and he's commanded the Army's audiovisual activity. In 1981, he became the assistant director of AFRTS, and he served in that position until his military retirement in 1983. After a year with private audio-video firm, he returned to government service as a civilian. Ladies and gentlemen, the Director of Broadcasting for the Department of Defense and the Director of the American Forces Radio and Television Service, Mr. Melvin W. Russell.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. 64 years have now passed since Tom Lewis traded in his business suit for Army khaki and began building what we know today as the American Forces Radio and Television Service. In the beginning, it was Major and later Colonel Tom Lewis who orchestrated the concept of bringing the sounds of home into the foxholes along the European front and across the beachheads of the Pacific. What Colonel Tom Lewis did is to give us the sense of who we are. On February the 5th, 1945, 3 years after he started the American Forces Radio Service, it was Tom Lewis who said, "Every time my staff looks at the huge wall map at their headquarters, they exulted in the ever-increasing number of flags that denoted more and more stations in operation. They were conscious of three things we've learned so far. Nothing is perfect, nothing is complete, and nothing is static." Think today of our newest affiliates in Iraq and Afghanistan. Think about the expansion of the Pentagon Channel and the tremendous challenge and opportunity before us in the consolidation of the military broadcasting and the defense media activity. And remember Tom's words, nothing's perfect, nothing's complete, nothing's static. It was also Colonel Tom Lewis who told the New York City Advertising Club in 1945, and this is my most favorite quote from him, "There's still that soldier, that Navy man, somewhere not yet reached by any of our efforts. There's still that spot waiting for its transmitter or its receiver. Our job is to find that man and fill that need." Today, Colonel Tom Lewis will be extremely proud of the men and women of AFRTS serving around the world. It is their execution of his pioneering spirit that ensures no serviceman or woman overseas goes without that touch of home. It is the vision of our founding father, Colonel Tom Lewis, that we honor here tonight.
Since 1978, the presentation of the Colonel Tom Lewis Award has been the highest.
As well as the Defense Media Center and the Defense Information School selected one person from each of their ranks for consideration for the Colonel Tom Lewis Award. 5 people who have made a major impact on the AFRTS mission. 4 of the nominees will receive the AFRTS Distinguished Broadcasters Award, while 1 will be presented with the Colonel Tom Lewis Award.
Before we make those presentations, we want to present an honorary Distinguished Broadcaster Award to Bill Johnson. Please direct your attention to the video monitors for a tribute prepared by Mr. Jim Langdon. Mr. William Henry Johnson, known to everyone as Bill, is posthumously awarded for exceptional service to the American Forces Radio and Television Service. When the final history of AFRTS is written, an entire chapter could be filled by the life and achievements of soldier, airman, and Mr. Bill Johnson. From his Vietnam wartime service at Anderson Air Force Base on Guam, where he rocked the islands as BJ the DJ, to the critical role he played in the creation of SatNet, the AFRTS satellite network, to the years he kept AFN News on track, Mr. Johnson's remarkable humanity and depth of knowledge personified the very best of the military broadcast family. In 1981, Air Force Master Sergeant Bill Johnson reported to the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service Programming Center in Hollywood. Almost without interruption, he proved over the next 25 years, while on active duty and as a civilian, to be an incredibly dedicated professional and respected individual. He was an extraordinarily skillful broadcaster who helped give birth to regular AFRTS satellite service. He was the programming guru who kept SatNet and later multiple channels of AFN, including AFN News, on track and up to the minute. He was a friend, a mentor, and an instructor who freely shared his techniques and experiences with generations of military broadcasters. He was a consummate professional whose dedication to the military audience never wavered, with a genuine soft spot for painfully corny humor. Mr. Johnson had a marvelous work ethic and devotion to duty that made him an outstanding team player in this fast-paced world of live satellite broadcasting. He was one of the behind-the-scenes guys, without whom AFRTS satellite service would never have become such a worldwide and world-class operation. He was dependable, resourceful, and could always be counted on to quickly juggle the most difficult scheduling conflicts. The impossible ones took just a little longer. He will be missed as the caring and marvelous friend that he was to all of us. His outstanding service and dedication reflected great credit upon himself, the United States Army, the United States Air Force, and the American Forces Radio and Television Service. Accepting this honorary award, Bill's wife, Bobby.
Thank you to everyone, and Bill loved this work. It just, I don't know what we could wish for anyone more than to just work to the end of your life for what you just really loved, and I think that's how Bill felt. Thank you.
Our first AFRTS Distinguished Broadcaster Award, Army Sergeant First Class William L. Amos, is cited for outstanding meritorious achievement while serving as broadcast engineer, Defense Media Center, television audio support activity in support of AFRTS contingency missions. Sergeant First Class Amos is an exceptionally resourceful, knowledgeable, and dedicated soldier who was and is the engineer of choice to deploy on contingency missions when called upon by AFRTS. Sergeant First Class Amos deployed in support of both Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He served in Uzbekistan, worked closely with Air Force engineers to provide AFRTS radio and television service. In Iraq, he traveled the country installing FM radio and MMDS systems that brought AFRTS to tens of thousands of servicemen and women deployed in remote desert areas. Dispatched to Iraq again, he worked closely with the Coalition Provisional Authority and the Combined Military Command to establish the first AFRTS satellite uplink that delivered significant video and information to the Pentagon Channel. He was later called back to Baghdad, this time to design and build a studio facility at the U.S. Embassy for both use by the State Department and the multinational command. He coordinated and worked closely with the White House, State Department, and Defense Department personnel to complete this difficult and high-profile mission. Sergeant First Class Amos deployed to Utapao, Thailand to represent AFRTS during Operation Unified Assistance in support of military rescue and humanitarian relief missions. Battling heavy rains and working with a satellite uplink that was under power, Sergeant First Class Amos used his ingenuity to make the system do what the book said couldn't be done and delivered video to the Pentagon Channel and the services within 48 hours of arrival in country. In the United States, Sergeant First Class Amos deployed in support of Hurricane Katrina Joint Task Force. Using his superb initiative, he gathered required equipment, fuel, rations, and four-wheel drive transportation that enabled him to move his team into key areas where military operations were underway. He established a satellite uplink that brought back some of the first DoD internal information products to tell the story of this historic military rescue and humanitarian relief effort. Through his many assignments, Sergeant First Class Amos displayed ingenuity, resourcefulness, initiative, perseverance, and enthusiasm. His outstanding service reflects great credit upon himself, the United States Army, the Television Audio Support Activity, and the American Forces Radio and Television Service, and is in the finest tradition of the Colonel Tom Lewis Award.
Thank you. Mrs. Barber, Mr. Russell, Mr. White, distinguished guests, thank you. I just want you to know that I'm nervous right now. This is not a suntan from Phoenix working with NASCAR and the Pentagon Channel. So let me open this up. A few days ago, Mr. Baker invited me into Mr. White's office, where they let me know I was chosen for this award. Cliff also let me know a couple things. I could speak as long as I wanted or as short as I wanted. I'm not a broadcaster, so it's going to be short. He also told me I could say whatever I wanted to. But I'm looking out here, and I have all of my immediate supervisors, and I have some of my future supervisors. So I'm going to watch what I say. I want to make it to AFN East as a senior NCO. So here goes. I've been fortunate to have worked with some of the best leaders in DOD. Some of the names you'll recognize and some of them you won't. Army Sergeant Stacy Sherman, Army Sergeant Glenn Anderson, Army Sergeant Bert Irizarry, Mr. Frank Cox, Ms. Julie Teague, Mr. Gordon Perkins, Mr. Andy Harrell, Army Sergeant Scott Kruger, Mr. Jim Lambert, Mr. Dave Cloud, Mr. Mark Duff, Mr. Curtis Young, Navy Chief Roger Sherman, Air Force Sergeant Billy Humphreys, and also some of the tasker group out here, Mr. Baker, Mr. Woodruff, Mr. Young, Mr. Lance, and Mrs. Lance. And I asked myself, why am I fortunate, and why did I name these people and give kudos to their names? I'm going to say Jim Langdon also. Bob Heron, I saw over there. These guys, all of these people that I've mentioned, guided or set standards or mentored me and taught me to shoot for higher levels, all while making the customer number one and putting the priority or the spotlight not on themselves but the mission. As an infantryman, I trained for and received the EIB, and at the time only 3 soldiers earned this badge out of about 600, and that day was, I thought, was a huge spotlight. The light's a little brighter right now, and what a gracious honor it is to receive this Tom Lewis Award. To be recognized for traveling, hard work, and sacrifices, this is a great moment in my career. But I would like to take a second to say thank you to the people that I mentioned and all the other techs who watched my back and kept my ass out of hot water. There's a lot out there. So let me put the spotlight back on our mission to Mr. Russell, who's building DMA and his future of AFN. And what a great day to be a soldier. Heading for AFNE. Cool. Thank you, sir.